conferences, saying will put the country at the centre of a dynamic and growing group of global economies. At a meeting last night, the 11 members of the CPTPP, stay with me, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, approved UK's membership, paving the way for formal accession next year. More details now from Conservative MP and Secretary of State for Business and Trade and Minister for Women and Equalities, Kemi Badenoch, who joins me now. Why, in your views, good to have you on, by the way, Secretary of State, why is this so crucial for the British economy? Good morning.
It's because we are making a strategic shift for the future. And what we're doing is joining a trade bloc that has it will, when we join, have an economy of 11 trillion, 500 million people at the moment. But what's key is that this is where the growth is going to be coming from, in particular middle class growth, which is who we trade with, who we sell to. So it's very exciting for the UK. It is not a replacement for EU trade. We already have an EU FTA. This is in addition to that. And it's about looking at what the world economy is going to look like in 2030, 2050, and so on.
So who are our trading friends in the CPTPP? Can you give us some of the countries involved, Secretary of State?
Yes, Japan, Canada, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, Peru, Malaysia, Singapore, Chile, Brunei, and there are many more in the queue as well. So we've got in early, which is why it's good news.
So we didn't have deals with any of those countries you've just listed, New Zealand, Australia, Canada?
We did, but these aren't identical. So just because
if
have
we've got one
an
deal
agreement
with Australia, why do we need another one, Secretary of State?
It's about the synergies you get from a multilateral deal rather than a bilateral deal. So, for example, rules of origin on cars, buying goods from or components from Australia going into UK cars. Australia's got lots of critical minerals. We get stuff from there, put them into our supply chain, and they will count as local when we're exporting to CPTPP countries. And when you think about who else is joining that bloc, the US did want to until change of administration. I think all those sorts of opportunities are exciting.
They are exciting, but I have a report here. What do you understand the effect will be on GDP of the country, Secretary of State?
So is this the report that quotes my department's scoping figure of
0.08% growth in GDP from this deal?
Yes, that is exactly what I asked when I was shown those figures. And how they explained it to me is that 2 years ago, they did a scoping exercise. They used 2014 figures just to get some comparative analysis. That's not how people should look at this deal. Should think about it like a startup. When you are a big company buying a startup, it's not about what you're going to get from it today. It's about the potential for tomorrow.
Right, but the potential, this is in some years' time. Currently,
No. It's 2014. It's 2014
no, but
numbers.
The effect as growth in years to come could be 0.08% is the number that I'm reading here.
If we don't use the deal properly, if nothing changes, if people just continue as they are.
So what figures should we be reading? Because I'm sure you and your colleagues will use the deal properly. So what percentage will we be looking at?
Well, I don't have figures. I don't have figures like that, and I'm always suspicious of these forecasts. They're constantly revised. It's about looking at what the population of those countries are going to be. The projection is that CPTPP will be bigger in 2050 than the EU. We're going to be a part of that. Those economies are growing. They're doing well, and we want to be trading freely with them, just as we do with the EU.
Indeed, but
so we're increasing our market access.
Okay, Secretary of State, just to clarify, we've gone into a deal and we don't know full details of the potential upside. We don't know.
We know the potential.
So it's not 0. So what is it? 10%?
So you can't analyze it that way, Nick. I'm not going into a market and buying fish. You can look at the potential. If we don't use the deal properly, then the figures won't be good. If we use them well, they will be very good.
But what is very good? It's very good between 2 and 4%, between 4
Yes,
and 6%.
yes, but also remember, this depends on which countries join. There's a queue of countries. Some of them may join, some of them won't. So I can't speculate what happens if Ecuador and Costa Rica join. What happens if China joins? All of that could change the scope and the scale. So if what you're trying to get me on is it going to be 0.75 or is it going to be 7.5? I'm sorry, I'm just not going to play that game. Every time politicians come on these shows and give a figure, by the time they've left the room, the figure has changed. What I'm trying to explain is what it is we're doing and why it's important.
Have we
not
had to
arguing
pay?
about percentage figures? No, we haven't had to pay.
Okay.
It's not. So this is very different from being in the EU. There is no parliament. There is no commission. There's no sort of regulating in that sense. There's no loss of sovereignty. So people often ask me, "Oh, this is going to be terrible for food standards." No, the food standards are going to be outlined by UK law. People have to meet that. What we're talking about is quotas. So this is more like what the European Economic Community, which we joined in the 70s, was, rather than a very integrated political union. This is not
you've
political
almost
union.
anticipated my question.
This is a trading. This is a trading bloc.
To those who mourn the decision made as regards Britain's membership of the European Union, does this make up for it, in your view?
It's not supposed to make up for it. It's in addition to the free trade agreement that we have with the EU. One of the things that happens now is that people talk as if we've put up a wall and we don't do anything with the EU at all. We are still trading and trading freely. Our exports, in particular on things like gas, have gone up. EU trade, depending on how you look at it, is doing well. It's increasing. I'm not saying that it's been easy for everybody. I'm not saying it has been perfect. There are, of course, consequences to leaving a bloc like that. But we are still working on our EU agreement. You look at things like the Windsor Framework. That's what having an independent trading policy is like. It's not a fixed thing. It's very dynamic. Every day we go to EU countries, I sign MOUs, we try and fix things that have become sticky. But in addition to that, we now have this new thing which we can add, and that's why it's fantastic. And it is one of the benefits of leaving the EU, having more of the opportunity to make our own way in the world.
All right, just a couple of other questions. Noting, of course, you're Minister for Women, I wonder whether you've had sight or your colleagues have made you aware of a report into the fire service which regrettably shows that women and minority firefighters are in some instances the victims of bullying, harassment and racial slurs and other such matters. Do you think we have, we know what we have with the police force, do you think we have institutional racism within the fire service, Secretary of State?
So it's impossible to be able to use that term without looking at the facts of the matter. I am someone who tries to make sure that people are educated about what institutional racism means. We had a government report which was in response to the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities that outlines how we're going to tackle those issues. There is a very specific definition. It doesn't mean what a lot of people think it means, which is that there are racists in an institution. It's about the way that the institution deals with issues around discrimination and prejudice. Without seeing the individual cases and having an investigation around that, I wouldn't be able to comment. What I would say is it's very disappointing to read this. We need to root out all incidents of prejudice and discrimination. We can't have people going into the workplace and feeling this way and having these experiences. No doubt it won't be a majority of the people. So we also need to make sure that we support those firefighters who haven't got anything to do with the allegations or outcomes which have been discovered. And a thorough investigation needs to take place. There are legal remedies and others, such as looking at the Equality and Human Rights Commission. So we have facilities in place to deal with this sort of thing. But it's very disappointing to hear about what's happening in the fire service.
Final question, Secretary of State. Rishi Sunak is promising schools will get long overdue guidance on trans issues after Easter. This amid concerns parents are being kept in the dark when their children say they might want to change gender. There's even a report that says that parents are not informed by schools that their pupils are coming there and are exploring the idea of transitioning. I note that you're a mum. What do you think that guidance should be?
So the Prime Minister has said that the guidance will come out before the summer. I'm pleased about that. I agree with it. I think that it is something that schools are crying out for. I've spoken to head teachers, even the ones for my own children's school. So you are right. It is something that will be produced by the Department for Education.
Should a school not be telling mum or dad that their child is transitioning or exploring transitioning? Surely a parent has a right to know.
Yes, I believe that a parent has a right to know, and what we're going to do with the guidance is make sure that we set out what what the law is, and help many of those schools who really are confused about what to do, depending on the specific scenarios. But I'm very much of the view that parents should know. I have 3 children myself, and I think I would be astonished if a school was doing things without letting me, the parent, know.
Enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much for your time today. Kemi Badenoch is Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Minister for Women and Equality, is appearing on LBC 4 after 9. Let's go to those news headlines. Thomas Watts.
On your radio, on Global Player.